So, handing over to Lucinda.
Morning, everyone. Um, Thank you so much to the team at Make a Will Online for working us today, or working with me specifically. I know that you had Richard Radcliffe last month, and you've got a bit of a break over the summer, but Paul Brown at the next one. So I really feel like I'm very blessed and honoured to be invited alongside such great speakers. So I hope that today's session will give you a nice balance of some insights, but also provide a great opportunity for you to discuss with your peers some new ideas or thoughts, or just even share and exchange thinking you might have around legacy giving. Um, so in terms of what we're going to cover today, I should start by introducing myself, shouldn't I? I'm Lucinda Frostick. I'm director at Remember a Charity. I've been with the team at Remember a Charity for a couple of years now. Before that, I worked in charity sector comms for about 20 years. My very first role in the sector was with a fantastic organisation called the Giving Campaign, which was a collaborative initiative to grow a culture of philanthropy here in the UK. So that kind of mission, that collective mission in terms of growing philanthropy is something that's very, very close to my heart. And I'm absolutely delighted to be back with Remember Charity doing something so akin to the work that the Giving Campaign did all that time ago. So what I'm going to be talking about here, I'll do a little bit of an introduction to Remember Charity for those of you that might not be so familiar. I do know that there are a few very familiar names and people. I can see that a few familiar faces and names already here on today's webinar. So please bear with me if you know some of this already. I'll keep it very short in terms of that background. And then the kind of key gist of things is to share some new insights into the legacy giving market that we've pulled together from our consumer benchmarking studies. And then perhaps the most key part of today is that opportunity for you all to come together and have a little bit of a discussion amongst your peers around what this might mean for you and any ideas you have. I'll round off with just a little bit on Remember a Charity Week, because of course that's coming up soon, just under 2 months away. And there'll be an opportunity to ask any questions. So at this point, I was just going to say, do drop any questions at all into the chat along the way, and I'll make sure that we come back to them. And if for any reason we don't have time today, I'm really happy to answer any questions after the call. So I hope that sounds okay. Okie dokie. So in terms of Remember a Charity, who are we? Well, I've already mentioned Remember Charity has been working collectively for quite some time to grow the legacy market. We're a consortium of around 200 charities working with a very broad range of partners, large and small. I think often people just think it's about the larger charities, but actually the larger volume of our charity members are very small organisations. And we work together with that collective mission of growing the legacy market, making giving from a will a social norm. I just thought I'd cover why that's really important. The reason it's really important is, of course, that charities are increasingly reliant on legacies. I think the latest data from Legacy Foresight shows that they raise around £3 in every £10 donated to good causes in the UK. And we can see that more charities are being named in wills every day. I think, again, latest figures from SME and Ford show around 11,000 charities named in wills last year. So without that market growth, charities could simply be competing with one another for that treasured legacy. We're working to make this really special form of giving, and I really do believe it's a very special form of giving, and that donors are just as privileged to be able to give in this way as we are as fundraisers in helping them achieve their goals and influencing the world they leave behind. But in terms of how we do this and what we do, there are a few key areas of our work. I think we're probably most known for our consumer programs. So the first of our kind of 3 key areas of work is around reaching and inspiring the public to leave a gift in their will. We run consumer programs all year round. We're definitely best known for Remember a Charity Week, of course, which I'll come on to later on this morning, which takes place in the second week of September. But we also do a lot of work behind the scenes with the legal sector and other intermediaries to normalise charitable will writing. We have a network of around 900 campaign supporters that we work with, and those are solicitors and professional will writers who all commit to referencing the charitable option when talking to their clients about wills. And then, of course, the third really key element is about nurturing and protecting the legacy environment. We're, again, really privileged to be able to work with a collective voice and represent our members. And by doing that, we can, of course, have the ear of government and other influential bodies. So that work is really important. while the work that we do is very much cause neutral and is about this collective voice to build and grow legacies, there's obviously more that we do behind the scenes to support our members. Largely, that is around getting their legacy message in front of hundreds of thousands of charitably-minded people each year. So we help, we promote their own charitable legacy stories. We develop customized promotional assets for legacy giving, which they can use. We include our charity members in a public-facing Find a Charity directory. We promote their own legacy stories and case studies all year round. And we invite them to get involved in Remember a Charity Week, as well as providing lots of research and resources in our members' areas and various other advantages as well. So yeah, do get in touch if you want to find out more. But at this point, I think probably best now for me to get on to the kind of the meat of today. Make a Will Online, of course, has invited us to share some insights from our latest consumer tracking study. I hope this is going to be really useful for you and at the very least inspire some great group discussion later on this morning. Just to tell you a bit about the background of the study, well, for about 15 years, we've run an annual consumer benchmarking study to track consumer attitudes and behaviours in legacy giving. This means that we can not only respond to emerging trends, concerns and issues, but also is a useful indicator of our progress in working with charities and whether indeed there is a growth in the legacy market. The study is carried out by OCO. It tracks will writing trends and legacy giving behaviours of around 2,000 UK charity supporters. And we look at charity supporters aged 40 plus, so those most likely to be thinking about writing a will. Some of the questions we've asked over the years have shifted, but the large majority of those have stayed the same so that we can track how that has shifted and moved over time. I think these trends really help us to give a deeper understanding of our target legacy audience. But that's not to say, of course, that they're any substitute for you knowing your own supporter base. Everyone is different. Every charity is different in terms of their own supporter base. And of course, we're living in an increasingly diverse world. People come from a broad range of backgrounds, nations and cultures, and they could all be your legacy pledges, which is, of course, very exciting in itself. But still, with this data, I hope we can build a bit of understanding around when it is people might be writing their will, who's most likely to do that, and when they're likely to be thinking about including a charity and perhaps some of the barriers and motivations. So moving on to the next slide. In terms of our sort of top line findings from this study, these of course are very positive. We're seeing a slow incremental shift in will writing. It's something, it's one of these things we've been monitoring. It is continual, rising from 62% in 2021 to 63% and then 64% more recently in 2023. So that's obviously so important. People can't write a gift into their will unless they've actually got a will in place. Nearly around one in three, so 31% of those with a will have now included a charitable gift, up from 29% a couple of years ago. And while older demographics are certainly more likely to have a will, something that's quite interesting and that emerges from this is that legacy giving propensity within that sort of subset, so those people who have already written a will, you're actually seeing higher propensity amongst the slightly younger age groups, so those in their 40s and 50s, and we'll come on to that in a moment. Just moving on to the next slide. This I find quite interesting. Sorry, there's a lot of data on here, but just to sort of summarize, on average, people are around 51 when they make their first will. Interestingly, this hasn't really changed much over the years, so we're not seeing any kind of shift in terms of when people are writing their wills necessarily, although we are seeing a small growth. I can feel ever so slightly smug that I did write my will a little before that, but certainly by no means when I first should have done, i.e. getting married or having children. On this slide, I think there's no major surprises. Ultimately, people are more likely to have a will if they've got significant assets, if they've been married, if they have children, grandchildren, and of course, as they're older. They're more likely to have a financial advisor in place to understand the inheritance tax incentives and to give to charities regularly and also to support more than one. I think it's
Lucinda, can I just interrupt you? We've got a question. It's probably easy to answer this because it's about, I think it's either this slide or the last slide you did.
Sure.
Is that 31% offers 64% of supporters or 31% of everyone who has left a will or 31% of people dying in any period?
No, really good question. It's really important that we have clarity over that. So if you look at the full data set, so charity supporters age 40 plus, it's about 1 in 5 who've left a gift in their will, 21%. The 31% is when you're looking just at the subset of those that have already written a will. So of those who've written a will, which is, of course, as you rightly said, the 64%, 31% of those have included a gift. Does that make more sense? Oh, and Marie, thank you so much for fielding questions, because I was going to say I'll come to them at the end of the data bit. But if you feel it's relevant to kind of jump in, please do, because I wish I was better at multitasking and could keep a close eye on the chat, but there's too much going on my screen, so I can't. Thank you. And please, yeah, please do raise any other questions along the way and I'll answer whatever I can. So the other thing I think that's really interesting to note here is that about 50% of people in this study haven't ever changed their will. So reaching people at the time of their first will could be that little bit more important, although that all comes with the caveat that, of course, we're looking at a broad age sample here of 40 plus and onwards, and people are more likely to change their will sort of later on in life. So of that kind of broader sample set, we're saying 50% haven't actually changed their, or 50% of those with a will haven't actually changed their will. So interesting. I think it's important that we get that legacy message in and keep on drip feeding it sort of along the way. But I think perhaps the key thing to think about there is are we there at the time where people are sort of first thinking about writing their will? Is the legacy message there? I can see there are a couple of questions in the chat. Marie, do you want me to come to those later, or?
Actually, that's just me sending through the invite to the next one. Don't worry about that. Sorry.
Marvelous. No, all good. So this is something else that I think is quite helpful to understand. So when is it that people write or change their will, i.e. what are the triggers? We know it's very much about life stages. So what we see here across all the age groups, birth of children, grandchildren are really important. Death of someone close to me is a really important trigger, followed by marriage. There are some differences for different generations. So for younger audiences, death of a loved one is a key trigger. It's interesting that, because I thought actually that would rise to the fore amongst older generations, but that is a very strong trigger for younger audiences, i.e. 40s and 50s versus 60 plus. Retirement, as you perhaps expect, is a key trigger for older will makers. And the most common triggers for changing a will are, again, death, births, and changing relationships with family members. In terms of how, so now I'm going to move on in terms of legacy giving itself and attitudes and behaviours towards legacy giving. When asked before about that 31% figure, this data set is a little bit broader. This is the full data set, so it's not just looking at people with wills, it's asking everybody about, oh gosh, sorry, I didn't mean to go forward so quickly. Sorry, too many slides. This chart, I know it looks very complicated, but it follows Prochaska's stages of change model. Ultimately, what it does is it tracks behaviour amongst charity supporters through from rejection of legacy giving, through unawareness to awareness around the option of leaving a gift to charity in the will, onto contemplation, so those who are thinking about it, those who are preparing to do it, and action. And this really is the key kind of tracking slide that we've carried out for tracking question rather that we've carried out for many years, because it's so important to see how those views are shifting and changing over the time. I think perhaps one of the most significant shifts we're seeing here is the reduction in rejection. So 1 in 5 people have now left a gift in their will, but if we look over on the left-hand side, it was sort of back in 2010 when this tracking study began. We had about 12% of people saying that they would not leave a gift, they wouldn't be open to leaving a gift. That's dropped down to 9%, and it's a fairly kind of steady drop over the years. Awareness has grown, and the key areas where we're seeing growth and movement is, of course, over on the right-hand side, the preparation columns, and, of course, action. So this is a very welcome indicator. This shows us there's greater propensity for legacy giving. More people say they've already left a gift or are preparing to do so. But who is it? who is it that's most likely to leave a gift in their will? Well, as we talked about before, will writing increases with age, and so older age groups are most certainly likely to have a gift in their will. But this slide looks at those with a will, looks at those that have a gift in their will and what are the common factors. So it's people who are single, without children, those who have assets of over £1 million. Ultimately, it's many of the same factors that influence will writing as a whole. Those alone probably show no major surprises. There are a couple of other trends emerging from data sort of which isn't here on this slide, such as increased propensity amongst minority ethnic groups than there used to be. There are some really interesting sort of common hobbies, if you like: travel, TV, family time, gardening, outdoors and walking. All these things are, there's higher propensity amongst those that are interested in leaving a gift in their will. Interestingly, though, as we talked about at the start, there's a really striking difference in the uptake of legacy giving amongst younger generations. So, as we'll see here, about 37% of those in their 40s and 50s with a will have included a gift to charity, whereas 27% of those 60 plus. So we're seeing a little bit of a shift generationally there. That's really interesting. I mean, what that means for each person on this call and for your own legacy fundraising strategy is really up to you. But I think for me, it reinforces that message around continuing to drip feed the legacy message along the way, but also being open to having those conversations at earlier stages with younger supporters potentially. I mean, again, when it comes to legacy investment, very much an individual decision down to each particular charity in terms of their target age group. But it's interesting, I think, to think about those younger audiences being real advocates for legacy giving. And perhaps also they can have more encouraging conversations with their family members about it. So just moving on to the next slide, I kind of thought maybe we might want to take a dip out of the data for a moment because it's easy to get lost in the numbers. So just drawing back from the figures for a minute, I think there are many different ways and triggers for people writing their will. But here are three that have just captured our attention recently. First, I think many of you will know this example. Sorry, I don't have a permitted image of Richard Cousins, so I've popped in here a picture of an aeroplane, and I'll explain why in just a moment. For those of you who don't know, Richard Cousins tragically died in a plane accident with his family in Australia a few years ago. He was a leading businessman with the Compass Group. Just a year before he died, he changed his will to include a common tragedy clause so that if he and his children died at the same time, the bulk of his estate would go to charity. While that's, of course, devastating for the family's loved ones, because he did indeed pass away so shortly after having made that change to his will, this led to an astonishing £41 million gift to Oxfam. And I hope that that's some comfort actually to some of the other relatives left behind, that so much good has come out of that change. I'm also sharing the late Lynn Goodman. Those of you on the call who are already members of Remember a Charity will know that he was a long-standing ambassador for us at Remember a Charity, professional dancer, much-loved TV personality, head judge of Strictly Come Dancing. When working with us, he decided he couldn't very well champion the message about gifts and wills if he hadn't written one in himself. So he sat down and talked with his family about the good causes he cared about, and he indeed changed his will. He became a really vocal and passionate advocate for giving in this way until he passed on so recently. Then also the third example I wanted to share here, this is one of the American songwriter and pianist Aretha Franklin. Many of you might have seen coverage, I think it was about a year ago now, in fact, towards the end of 2023. Aretha Franklin has, of course, a multi-million-dollar estate. This went to court after a handwritten document that was, funnily enough, signed with the letter A and a smiley face on it, was discovered wedged between the cushions of her living room sofa. That document, which was effectively a scribble on a piece of paper in a notepad, included buried under the sofa, was actually ruled by the US probate court as a valid will, meaning that her sons went on to inherit her estate. There's still dispute about her musical assets and various other things, and certainly not the way to go. But I think these three examples show how different people write their wills at different points in their life, and what triggers might indeed lead to change and a charitable legacy. Just going back to the data for a moment. we dig in a little bit to motivations for leaving a gift, again, I'm not sure how much of a surprise the data on here will be, but I think it's useful to look at the different nuances. What are those motivations for leaving a gift? People want to know that their gift's going to make a difference. That's the one that comes up most commonly. People do understand that charities rely on gifts and wills, and I think that's testament to the work that charities are doing in sharing how important legacies are to them. So that's great. For many people, it's just a natural next step in their donation journey. Others want to know how the charity will use their donations. If they feel confident that they're getting that story, they understand how it's going to be used, that supports their decision to give. And then people, of course, want to ensure that the causes that they care about are protected for future generations. Yeah, just a quick point here, about 29% of people that we spoke with say that they added charities when changing their will. So for them, it was later on in life, but just interesting to note that trend. In terms of reasons for not including a gift, so here we spoke to the people that chose not to leave a gift about why it was that they chose not to. For most of them, it's that they want to leave everything to family and friends, which is, of course, understandable that would emerge as perhaps the key factor. Others think they don't have enough money, they don't have a strong affiliation to a charity or charities, and then interestingly, for some of them, they didn't know how a charity would actually use it. What I think is most key here is that 25%, so that's 1 in 4, just didn't think about it at the time. And that for me highlights how important it is that we continue to get that legacy message out. I included this slide simply because I know you had a really interesting conversation with Richard Radcliffe at the last Make a Will Online Legacy Loop session, where he talked a little bit about getting that percentage message across to your supporters. Our research touches on that a little bit, where about 77% of those of people in our study say that they would indeed be willing to leave a small share of their estate to charity. When you drill into it a little bit more, actually people are willing to leave quite a significant amount. 16% say they would donate 6 to 10%, and 13% say they'd give 10% or more. Of course, what people say they're willing to do and what they actually do can differ, but I still think that's a really interesting shift. I'm really mindful of time, Marie, so I will whiz through the last couple of slides. We're nearly there. Another interesting trend that I think emerges from this and is really important for us as charities in terms of how important it is that we perhaps convey that the difference a legacy can make, and actually what a difference it also makes if we understand that people have left us a gift, and what more, how we'd like to thank them, how we can nurture that relationship. This is a consistent finding within the data over the years. About 2 in 3 legacy pledges, so 64%, haven't let charities know they've included a gift. And of those, almost half, 47%, say it's never occurred to them to tell their chosen charities. And 1 in 4 say they can't see how it would help to let them know. So it's not necessarily the fear of them being bombarded by charities with more information. It's just, it didn't occur to them. They can't see why it would make a difference. So it feels like there's an education piece we could be feeding into there. And this is my closing one. So I guess the key thing for us from this is legacy giving appetite is high. Behavior is shifting. People are starting increasingly people are increasingly likely to leave a gift in their will and to be writing a will in the first place. Adoption is fairly widespread, with 1 in 5 charity supporters having left a legacy. But the key thing I want to say is there is far greater potential. There's huge room for growth. In our consumer tracking studies, consistently, again, around 40% of people say they'd be happy to leave a gift after taking care of friends and family. So the appetite is there. There's a real opportunity for us to close that gap between intention and action. And there's a great opportunity, I think, for us to do that individually as charities, but also collaboratively too. So that wraps up my bit of the presentation. We are going to be going out into breakout groups, but I don't know if anybody has any questions they'd like to ask about the data in the meantime. I'm conscious I've thrown a whole bunch of stats at people, but if you'd like to raise a question, please do now.
Oliver's got a question. Go ahead, Oliver.
So I'm not entirely sure it's my place to do this. My brain's just fizzing
Oh,
looking
sorry,
at.
I might
Thank
have
you
gone through
so
it too
much for
fast.
no, in a good way, in a good way. Just thoughts and opinions and ideas popping through my head very, very quickly. I think the most powerful slide for me just then was the open to leaving a larger share slide, where you were talking about 77% willing to leave a small share, 16 and 13%, or so 29% in total are willing
Yeah.
to leave a higher share. Um, and just the thing that popped into my head was, is it better, in your opinion, to get 77% of your supporter base, or the 64% of them who are willing to leave a gift? Is it better to get 77% of your supporter base to give 1 to 2% and tie your messaging around that? Or is it better to get 29% of your supporter base to give around about 10% of their estate, give or take?
So
What's
that's
what are
really
the
that's a great question. And I think it's impossible to answer because you're asking somebody who works for a behavior change organization whose focus is to normalize giving to charity from will. So many ways. We want to see, we want to create a world where effectively everybody thinks about leaving a gift to charity in their will, and it becomes the norm to have that thought process. But yes, of course, if you've got more of those sort of higher asks, or rather, you've got more people choosing to leave a higher proportion, fundamentally, the income difference from that could really be quite significant. What I would say, so there is no clear answer to that, but what I would say is I've seen quite a bit of research around the power of a sort of percentage ask, and and I think asking for a small share, trying to encourage people to think about residual gift is very important. We just need to be careful about anchoring that ask at any particular level. And I think probably the right answer for each particular charity means a good deal of consumer testing, talking with their own supporters about what they feel comfortable with. We certainly want to move people along that track so they're thinking about residuary giving. I think we just need to be quite careful about where we place that anchor, because for each supporter, it's very different. It can be a real turnoff if we ask for too much. It can be, but we can also miss out on really significant donations if we just ask for something quite small. So I think it's a case of reaching out to your own supporter base and considering wherever possible you can weave in that residuary message about leaving a small share, whatever that share might be.
Thank you.
Marvellous. Great question. Marie, if I move over to the breakout groups, would that be the right thing to do at this point?
Yeah, definitely.
So Marie was explaining how this is such a nice opportunity for so many of you to come together and talk with your peers. So what I've aimed to do is, in providing some of the data behind this, is come up with a question that sort of ties in with this kind of overarching theme of legacy growth, encouraging, sorry, there's a bit of background noise at this end. And we thought the breakout group discussion would be a great time for you to go away and think about what action you might take to grow your legacy supporter base. So for those of you that have already taken action and are seeing growth, maybe you might want to share tips with colleagues. For those that are new, share ideas, hypothetical or otherwise. It'd be great to hear your thoughts. So Marie's going to work her magic and break us all into group discussions. So I just ask, when you're broken into that group, you will have about 10 minutes roughly. And can you just appoint one person who'll be able to come back and feed one key thought back to the collective group as we can be.
Welcome back,
back in the room.
That's marvellous. Marie, have we got everybody back in, do we think?
Yes.
Looks like it.
I believe so. It just basically kicks everybody back in.
Fabulous. Yeah. Well, I hope it was really useful for you to have a chance to chat amongst yourselves. I think we had about 4 different groups. So I was just going to ask one person from each group to come back and share one thought from that kind of group discussion. It'd be really helpful to hear from you. So the first group, Marie, could you give me a name of someone in the first group so that I don't know if everyone will know which group they were in.
Oh, I wasn't that. Oh dear. Oh no, I've got it. Room 1. Okay, so who was so we had Donna, Hannah, Helen, and Helena in room 1. Group 1.
That could be me.
Oh, marvelous. Would you be happy to share your thoughts?
Yeah, so I was in the room with Helena and Helen and Donna, and yeah, so we basically was just kind of saying that we just feel that just that continuous sort of like drip feeding into any sort of communications, things like that. I was explaining that sort of I'm fairly new to sort of legacies, so kind of one of my ideas was sort of getting testimonies from our pledges and using that as kind of like a mini series, including it in legacy brochures, email communications, and things like that. But sort of one thing that we all kind of concluded was that, you know, we should just be very grateful and humbled that these people sort of pledge to us, and it's just kind of looking after them and making sure that they feel valued, because also there is word of mouth as well, and you know, if you feel valued, then people will talk. So
Hannah, that's great to hear. I'm like, I took away from that sort of drip feeding the legacy message, the power of testimonials, and you couldn't be more right. You know, just really looking after our supporters as
yeah,
we'd like to be looked after ourselves. You know, if they're going to do
exactly.
something so meaningful, making them feel treasured and valued. That's
Yeah,
lovely. Thank you so much.
yeah, Helen from RNIB, she just said something great. It was just that, you know, that we should be humbled, that someone would consider us, even if it's their last pound or whatever. You know, we should be humbled that they think of us in that time, which I thought was a really lovely message to take from that.
You're absolutely right, and particularly when we consider those other stages again, when people might be writing their wills and how much other stuff and other noise there might be in their life at that particular moment.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, Hannah.
No
that
problem.
was fabulous. Group two, Marie, who do we have in group two?
Group two is Hannah, John Furness, Laura Kite, and Cheryl Armitage.
Marvelous. Would
Yeah,
one of you...
I can take this one. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, so it was a really interesting group actually, because we were all at very different stages of our legacy journey. So two of us were from smaller charities, and I was saying that we really only started our legacy journey last year when we took part in Remember a Charity Week the first time. And we were talking about how it's really important to educate yourself as a charity as much as possible. That was sort of where I started last year, just trying to learn as much as I could. And that's when we found Make a Will online as well. And our first campaign, we secured a residuary gift from that campaign, which we were all really pleased about. And yeah, so we were also talking about the importance of like internal communication around it and sort of getting buy-in from the board, and how that can be a bit challenging at times. So Cheryl, who's in our group, spoke about, so they're a lot further on in their journey with this, and they like media coverage, and we were sort of talking about how that transpired, and it really started with getting that investment from the board, that sort of internal buy-in.
Thank you. Hannah, that's fantastic. Sorry, I know that you're a Hannah as well, so just to avoid, I was double checking that I hadn't got the names right. It's really lovely to hear, and I think it's so important that also people who are, it's wonderful that you're able to kind of share the tips that are coming across from the group with, and as you said, people from very different stages in their legacy journey. And there's no stage where any of us think that we know it all. I think we're all learning along the way as we get to understand our own supporters better. But that message about internal communications, you couldn't be more right. I mean, it's so important no matter which organisation, and we'll all have it along the way, won't we? As chief execs and trustees move and shift, there'll always be the same old questions. So great to hear that coming out of the group. Thank you for sharing. We've got group three.
Yeah, so group three, we had Hannah Best, Mike, Lahari, and Miriam.
Are we going to have another Hannah?
Sadly not. You've got me, I'm afraid.
Oh, right.
I was volunteered. But that was an interesting chat for us, because we were all from different wildlife trusts, so we all kind of knew each other anyway. So that was, I don't know, it was intentional, but that's what happened. So fortunately, we all seem to be on the same page, which is also useful. So what we basically said was, I guess we're kind of lucky because our supporters are already quite committed to us because of the kind of charity we are. So our main goal is to continue to build the relationships and get them to engage with us. And the biggest barrier that we look at is procrastination, where they are engaged, they want to do it, but they don't do it.
Yeah.
So therefore, we events is what we came up with as our priority, because it can kind of give. It's not really a deadline, but a sort of deadline to get someone to get moving with it. Give them the opportunity to chat with a legal professional, share with them what we're up to in person, talk to them, and help them not decide to leave a gift, but get over the line of starting the journey, I think is the difficult thing. And I think that's what seeing them in person at events can help to do.
That's really interesting. Actually, we were speaking with a solicitor recently who was telling us that increasingly they're getting people coming into their offices actually who were a bit nervous about writing a will. And the thing that tipped them over the edge is actually their engagement with charities, whether it's through events or what have you. And they just really, really wanted to do this wonderful, good thing. And that was the motivator for writing their will rather than the key life stage or anything else. So interesting to see that the charitable message itself can be such a kind of strong motivator in driving people to take action. Thank you, Mike. I really love to meet you. I think we had one more group. I'm sorry, Marie. I know I'm being mindful of time.
We had Jessica and Lauren in the last group. So who will be room number 4's spokesperson? Are they still here?
Hiya.
Hi, Jessica.
We just spoke about events and internal growth. So the importance of having other people within the charity willing to discuss legacies with outside prospects. It's all well and good getting a legacy message out there, but if somebody else from the charity was approached and they didn't know even the slightest thing about it, it could really turn people away from leaving it.
Yeah, that's such a good point. There's sort of internal legacy champions and just ensuring that everybody knows how to field that legacy inquiry or the conversation that comes through and knows what to do with it.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Oh, thank you so much for sharing your outtake. And interesting again that events was a kind of key theme within your session and within Mike's group as well. So thank you.
So we did sorry, Lucinda, we did get a message in between all that from Donna, but this feeds into your next part. She said, what would your recommendations be for Remember a Charity Week?
Oh, that's a good one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I'll quickly whiz through because I'll only do it in a couple of minutes because I know we've all got an awful lot, we've run through a lot of data and we're running short on time. So I'll just tell you a little bit about what we're doing in Remember a Charity Week and then try and answer that question. So Remember a Charity Week is a great opportunity. It comes up sort of the week beginning the 9th of September. Great opportunity for organisations to highlight your legacy message. In terms of what we're up to, I'll share that in just a moment, but it's a great moment for charities, solicitor firms, will writers, online will writing providers, government and other strategic partners, all to kind of activate that movement towards legacy growth that we were talking about earlier today. On the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see that there's a kind of lovely collage of Willy materials. These are some of the customizable assets that we provide our members with to really shout about legacies during Remember a Charity Week and, of course, beyond, because you can't just ask for wills in September. Coming this September, yes, again, we're working on personalised will you assets and videos for our members. We're just, in fact, tomorrow, we are filming our next Be Remembered campaign, which builds on Frank. You might have seen the chap with the very large marrow and bushy moustache on the slide a couple of slides back. Kathy here holding her slightly broken cake. We're working up 3 new scenarios to add to the Remembered campaign to really kind of bring that legacy giving message to life. We'll be running a broadcast and print PR campaign, launching a new interactive map called the Great Map of Philanthropy, which really showcases the impact of legacy giving across the world. We will have celebrity interviews inspiring people to leave a gift and activate that professional advisor and partnership network to accelerate that movement towards legacy growth. So in terms of what you can do to answer that question, I think, if you're outside of the consortium, certainly remember, you just know that people are going to be talking about gifts and wills this September. So it makes sense to utilize that as an opportunity to have more discussions, whether that's internally or externally. If you're already a member of Remember a Charity, please, get in touch. There are so many different ways that you can utilize the resources that we have for you. And if you're not involved and you would like to get involved and find out more about membership, do please get in touch at any stage. We're always delighted to hear from anyone and to answer any questions along the way. How are we doing for time? 11:58. Does that bring me back to you, Marie, for a wrap up?
It does, yeah. So have we got any more questions?
Sorry, one other quick thought, Marie, for anyone that's got an interest in hearing more about legacy news from within the sector. You're very welcome to subscribe to our legacy bulletin, which is quick and easy to do. You can scan the QR code, or if the slides are being shared post today, you can click through on the link there. But we share news from across the sector on charitable legacies, so it might just be useful for you.
Lucinda. Thank you very much, Lucinda. Have we got any more questions for Lucinda? Any more? Maybe want to unmute themselves or put something in chat? No, everybody's.
In which case, despite a very noisy lawnmower behind me, I'll just come back in and just say a huge thank you for having me speak today. And if anyone wants to get in touch with any other questions at any stage, please do.
Yeah, lovely. So thank you everybody for joining. We're having a break in August. We're back in September, navigating quite a bit of leave in August. But if I'm not available, Oliver and Alex will be available to answer any questions or queries. And also, we're here, we're your resource. So just get in touch if anybody needs any help or guidance, or thinking about running any internal engagement sessions. Me and Oliver can help out with those sessions. Also, if any new staff come along into your teams that you need me to sort of hand over to, happy to do that. So just reach out. But thank you everybody for joining, and we will see you, hopefully we'll see you all in September for our next session with Paul about best practice for legacy admin. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Cheers,
you. There's lots
Lucinda.
of messages in the chat saying thank you, and it was very interesting. It's